Okay, so when we turn our attention to the lyrical etude for the bass clarinet, we need to note that this etude starts in the key of B flat major, but it's mostly constructed around a chromatic scale. So really, if our chromatic scale is well practiced, we're going to be pretty solid in here. It's written in the key of B flat, but it doesn't use it too much. You do want to go through and note where the B flats and the E flats do occur in the key, but again, for the most part, our chromatic scale is going to be really important as we go through here. So make sure that you follow the written articulation and note the differences between large groups of slurred measures like the first two measures versus measures that have articulations every two notes. So for example, the third measure. Okay, we want to make sure that we make a noticeable distinction between those articulations. I think overall the hardest part of selling this etude as a lyrical study is trying to make something of it when really it's sort of just more or less a series of chromatic scales linked together with alternating arpeggios. So there's two elements I think that we can do and incorporate into our playing to try to really package this as a nice lyrical etude. The first element is make sure that you follow the written dynamics. So in general, ascending passages should crescendo, descending passages should get softer. This should be somewhat natural, and probably you've heard this a lot, that as the notes go up you crescendo, as the notes go down you decrescendo. But you want to make sure, when you're playing something on the low clarinets for an audition, that you really take that to heart, because you're going to have to use a lot more air as you ascend through the range. And have a lot more support as you head into the high register. So doing the crescendo is not only natural, but it's also vital to your success to get the notes to sound equal and even throughout the register. So following the written dynamics and following the contour is one thing that's going to package this nicely as a lyrical study. But more importantly is the second element, which is the phrasing. So you have to have some sense of phrasing as you go through this study. And again, you have to play it like it's more than just a chromatic scale and some alternating arpeggios. So to that end, I would suggest you breathe at the following spots, because if you look, there's no spot to breathe. There's no marked breath anywhere. So we have to construct our breathing around the phrases. So with your pencil, I would mark breaths at the following spots. First spot, end of measure 8. After the low A, I would put a breath mark. Second spot, at the end of measure 14. I would put a breath mark there after the A. The third spot would be at the end of measure 22 after the D. And our last spot would be the end of measure 26 after the G. So counting the breath we start with before we start playing the first measure, we can make it through here in 5 breaths. The first one we start with and the 4 that I just mentioned to you, so 5 total. To get these phrases to work around these breathing points, I think it's going to be very important that you sort of set up the breath by pulling the tempo back just a little bit before you breathe, right? it'll make the breath far less abrupt and it'll make for a better musical effect. So, for example, measure 7 and 8, remember I'm going to take a breath at the end of measure 8. If I were coming into that, I might pull the tempo back at the end of measure 8, take my breath, and then recover the tempo as I go through measure 9. Okay, so it might sound something like this. Okay? So, if you have a good plan for your breathing as you go through this, that's going to be the key to really making this an effective demonstration of your lyrical and melodic playing. All right? And it'll make for a very musical presentation of what essentially would otherwise just be a bunch of technical patterns that you would have memorized as part of your scale requirement for Allstate. So think about the dynamics, think about the breathing. Good luck as you prepare, and as always, let me know if you have any specific questions about this.